So, like every week with this new format, I am starting out with Question of the Week as the first official segment of the podcast. And the way the Question of the Week works is that I will, around Sunday or Saturday morning, I will post on the YouTube community page asking for you guys to submit your questions for the upcoming podcast. And for those of you who aren't aware, the YouTube community page, if you just go to the Access Black Pistons YouTube channel and kind of go through the different tabs, there'll be videos, playlists, and there will be community. And that's really where I interact with a lot of you guys while I'm not posting the videos. And I post things like Question of the Day, which is sort of a variant of this Question of the Week, where I just put out a poll, ask you guys what you're thinking about certain things and all that sort of stuff. So every Saturday or Sunday, I put out a Question of the Week asking you guys just to submit any questions that you have. And I will go through them and pick out one to answer every week on the podcast. And it's just another way for you guys to input your own suggestions and your own voice into the podcast and to really, give it its own flavor, right? I don't want to just be talking all the time. I am talking all the time, to be fair, but not just giving my own thoughts, also wanting to hear what you guys are curious about and what you guys want me to talk about as well on the podcast. So thank you guys so much again for submitting questions during the Question of the Week. And let's get into this week's question, shall we? If you haven't read from the title of the clip video or the title of the podcast video, you guys will probably already know what we're talking about. But this question comes again from Vort, who submitted a question last week as well. Thank you so much. And again, if you guys want to submit your questions and have your name shouted out on the podcast, please make sure to comment down below. Comment down below either in the main podcast episode, YouTube video, or the clipped version as well, and also again in the community page, and I will be sure to look for your questions and pick out the best one and shout you out on the podcast. So thank you so much, Fort, for this question, and I think this is a really interesting question, actually, and it should, it might give some insights into what I'm thinking about certain things about the MCU Disney Plus shows and all that sort of stuff. So the question is, what was your favorite episode of each Disney Plus Marvel show? Thank you so much again, Vort, for that question. And let's talk about Disney Plus Marvel. If you guys have been following the channel, you'll know it's not a secret that I haven't really enjoyed a lot of the series. Let's be fair. A lot of the series I haven't really enjoyed as much as I think I should have. Obviously, we have She-Hulk coming out this week, and that looks interesting. But I also think there are signs for me to be excited about She-Hulk, and there are signs for me to be a little bit nervous about She-Hulk. I think that the idea of it being sort of an episode by episode legal procedural like Ally McBeal is really exciting to me. I love legal procedurals. I love mysteries. I love sort of courtroom dramas. I think that would be fun. Comedies, obviously, as well. I just think that some of the more generic superhero-y action stuff looks a little bit, I'm going to say it, very underwhelming to me. That doesn't quite justify why we're doing a show on this character, but again, I could be totally wrong about that. So I'm looking forward to at least maybe hopefully being surprised and having my expectations subverted at the very least. But we're here to talk about the 7 previously released Disney Plus shows. I am including What If because I think it's a fun exercise just to put in What If as well. So there have been 7 shows released. I can say, looking at this list of the 7 shows and the 7 episodes that I really love, that I have really only loved one show. I've liked maybe two or three. Like has a wide range to it. I think I've liked 3 of them. I have, how should I say it? Maybe tolerated or not quite disliked, but not a big fan of a couple of them, and then just straight up disliked What If. It wasn't quite for me. But to be fair, each one of these Disney Plus MCU shows has had their ups and downs, but a lot of ups as well. I will have to give them credit on that. So really what we're celebrating here in this video, but also just kind of using it as a way to talk about different patterns that I'm noticing on these Disney Plus shows and what maybe I think that they could fix in the future, is just celebrating some of the best episodes that they've released thus far. So we're going to start out, we're going to go in release order. And so we have WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, and Miss Marvel most recently. And obviously She-Hulk is coming up, but that won't be done for another couple months, so we will wait on that. So this is a great question, and I'm going to dive right in. So WandaVision. WandaVision had a lot of fun episodes, although I think that what worked really well about each individual episode for the most part is that there was a different audience for it, right? Like different people gravitated towards different sitcoms and things like that. But if you're looking at the overall story, right? If you're looking at it from beginning to end, episodes 1 through 9, and I've rewatched a few of the episodes myself, and if you kind of just watch the first few episodes, especially, it's very clear that they're building up very, very slowly, which is okay, but I think that it's a little bit more effective to ramp up the pace a little bit further, a little bit more than that. I think they lingered on some things a little too much, and I think that they sped through other things a little too quickly, like Agatha Harkness and her whole deal with it being her all along, allegedly. So there is that. But I think that episode 4 comes to mind, the one where they reveal everything and you get to see kind of what's behind the curtain. I also I love most of the sitcom episodes. I think episode 2 was pretty fun. The magic show one. I think episode whatever the 80s one was pretty fun, pretty interesting. I think whatever. Also that one had the scene where Wanda kind of storms out of the hex and confronts Hayward. Remember him? Remember when everyone hated Director Hayward? Yeah, good times. But I think it's pretty clear. I think the finale of WandaVision was a little bit of a dud, with some really great moments at the end as well, though. But I think it's pretty clear to me that my favorite episode of WandaVision is episode 8, Previously On. I think that this episode, interestingly enough, was not based on a sitcom, which is sort of the central appeal and charm of the show, but was really just a deep dive into Wanda Maximoff and her trauma and her history as a character. And I think that that's what's really effective about this episode, is that it is a character in Wanda Maximoff that we actually inherently care about so deeply. And this character, I think Kevin Feige has said, or somebody has said, that Wanda Maximoff has really had some of the most trauma and the most tragic backstory in the entire MCU. I forget who said that, but I think it's true. You know, you look through what's going on in these flashbacks in Sokovia and with the missile, obviously, her and her brother Pietro watching sitcoms with their family and just having a wonderful life, and then just getting that all taken away from her, and then going into Hydra to be experimented on with the Mind Stone, and then obviously becoming an Avenger, but then losing her brother, and that scene with Vision. I mean, my goodness, there's just a minefield of emotion there. You know, obviously the what is grief line is incredible, but also the other scenes after that, like, I'm just getting chills kind of even thinking about this episode. Like the scene where she goes to the Sword headquarters and just says, "I can't feel you," when she meets Vision again, and then the scene where she just completely breaks down in the empty abandoned lot, and I'm really getting a little emotional thinking about this even. Just that's how good this episode is. I think this episode might be my favorite one out of the bunch, out of all the Disney Plus episodes thus far, where she's in the empty lot and she pulls up the sign, the piece of paper, and it says, you know, from Vision, for us to grow old together in. And I mean, just talk about tragedy, right? Real tragedy, almost Shakespearean kind of tragedy. And I think that, again, this episode showed me that the WandaVision show is more than just sort of a fluffy MCU Disney Plus show. I mean, yes, she gets her costume at the end or whatever. Like, the trend with these episodes is that, yeah, you know, they get their new costume at the end or whatever. But I mean, still, I think that this episode really works on the emotional front and shows that this show was warranted. Like, it's not just sort of a shoe-in kind of a show. So I think that the penultimate episode really built up a great sort of second to last push into the finale. Obviously, the ending with her being called the Scarlet Witch was amazing as well. So really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed this episode. Let's talk about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a show that I have professed to not loving as much as the other shows. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And to be honest with you, I don't think there are a lot of standout episodes, but I will say, and if you're gonna notice a pattern very quickly emerging, that I do think that the penultimate episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the strongest one as well. I remember when there was a time around the What If Hawkeye era where I was starting to notice this pattern of, it's really interesting that these shows can really, really have a powerful second to last episode where they deep dive into these characters, but they can't stick the landing for whatever reason. I find that very interesting, and I think The Falcon and Winter Soldier was another example of that. I think that the opening action sequence with John Walker and Bucky and Sam fighting over the shield is actually quite good. Obviously, you get the training montages with Sam trying to become Captain America, but also what I forgot about being in this episode. I knew it was in the show. Obviously, it was one of my favorite things that they did was Sam Wilson's conversation with Isaiah Bradley about a black man taking up the mantle of Captain America, and I think that really I understand that this show had some issues sort of in production with the whole subplot about vaccines or whatever, kind of correlating with the pandemic and them not wanting to overlap or something of that ilk. But again, what I'm so impressed with is that this show was really able to take its subject material, much like WandaVision was with grief, and take the subject material about race in America and what it means to be an American hero and to be an American, and really dove into that. And that conversation that Sam Wilson has with Isaiah Bradley, again, I don't love this show, but I do think this is one of the best scenes in any of the Marvel series thus far, any of the Marvel movies even thus far. I think it's really quite profound what they were able to do there. So I have to give kudos to that, to Falcon and the Winter Soldier as well. I think that unlike WandaVision, the finale of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier was sort of on the same par as the other episodes. And I think that it was really, it just didn't have, it was kind of fighting a losing battle to begin with. I think that having Carly Morgenthau be the villain was just not the right move. And so I think that it suffered for that. But, what can I say? Loki is a show that I find wildly inconsistent. I think that there are some great episodes in there, and I think there are some really bad ones in there as well. I have been vocal on saying I really dislike Jonathan Majors' portrayal of He Who Remains, although I am confident that with other variants of Kang, he will do a much better job, in my opinion, because I know a lot of people loved what he did. It is what it is. But I will say that I do think Loki Episode 1 is one of, if not the best pilot of any MCU show thus far. I think that the pilot of Loki is fantastic. And I think that this idea of self-reflection and what are you and who are you and what are you defined by is quite profound. The conversations that Loki has with Mobius, is really something. It's something that you don't expect to see. I mean, I guess we should have after having seen the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Just that these profound kind of conversations that they're having. It's really something that I thought was so interesting from this character. And yeah, I was so happy to see that. And obviously Loki as well. Loki is a great character. Obviously seeing where he goes from Endgame as well. And just thinking about, just thinking about all these things, right? Like thinking about what his place is in the universe and just finding his purpose. I mean, that's the title. Sorry, the title of the episode is Glorious Purpose, and I think that that's just such a fitting title for this show. And I think that the reintroduction of Loki and really bringing him up to speed on his character is quite good. I think also episode 2, the variant, is just a fantastic episode as well. Show really goes downhill from there to me, in my opinion, but I think the first episode of Loki is really, really quite good. What If? I think it's pretty clear. What If is sort of an anthology, so I'm not going to dwell on this too much because they're sort of individual episodes, not episodes sort of in the larger arc of a show, so to speak. I mean, kind of, but not really. I did like episode 9. I did like the conclusion. I think that if you were going to bring them all together, which I really didn't want to, I would have preferred more like I Am Groot, sort of short, just off-world kind of random episodes. Like that's what I would have preferred, but whatever. That's not what I got. So if I had to pick one, obviously, I think it's pretty clear. Episode 4. What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? Just beautifully directed, beautifully done. The fact that he keeps losing Christine Palmer like that is just heartbreaking, and I think that it worked really well. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but that is my favorite What If episode. So if you're kind of noticing, and I'll kind of go back, just pay attention to the episodes other than What If that I'm picking, and see if you can pick out a pattern. Because in Hawkeye, my favorite episode is episode 5, Ronin. Now, like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, not a lot of the episodes really stood out to me when I thought back on them, and I had to look them up and really figure out what happened in which episode. I enjoyed the beginning. I sort of enjoyed the middle a little bit less, and the ending was fine. I just think that the reason I put Hawkeye a lot higher than the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is because it's less generic. It is generic-ish, but also it has some fun elements to it as well. And I think that it's just a little bit more up my alley. Like, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was clearly meant to be sort of an action thriller. And while I do like action films and shows, obviously, I think that there's only so much you can do with spectacle, right? Like, I think that you kind of need to be more than just action. I think Hawkeye at least was fun Christmas fun sort of thing, and just enjoying the Christmas spirit in the MCU. And at least for that, I was more on board. Also, I liked the chemistry between Haley Steinfeld and Jeremy Renner more than I did Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie, though they were pretty good. But yeah, I think episode 5, Ronin, is where obviously Hawkeye confronts Echo. Maya Lopez, Alaqua Cox playing a Maya Lopez, which was a cool fight scene. I also just picked Ronin because it's the most Yelena we get in the show, really. I think the finale is okay. I think the finale has some of the better Yelena scenes, like the scene where she confronts Clint is a really great scene. The scene where she is in the elevator with Kate is an awesome, really funny scene. But I think that that episode is just too inconsistent for me to put it as my favorite. I think episode 5, where you're dealing with the ramifications of Jack being kind of arrested, I believe, and Ronin kind of giving up the Ronin persona, I guess, in a sense. Also, just more Yelena Kate, please. Like, that was just so fun for me. So I think Hawkeye episode 5, though again, like I said, all these episodes in Hawkeye sort of just bled together. So, it is what it is. For Moon Knight, I think episode 1, the goldfish problem, is my favorite. I think that the more the mystery unraveled here in Moon Knight, the less interesting it became. I think that the appeal of the show, at least at the beginning, is that you really don't know what's going on. You really have no idea what's going on. And there's Egyptian gods, but it could all be in his head. There's another personality. There might even be a third personality. I think episode 1 to me it's right up there with Loki. Loki episode 1 and Moon Knight episode 1. I think Loki I give the slight edge, but it could. I even think, now that I'm even thinking about it, I think Moon Knight episode 1 might even be just as good. We'll say we'll put them as a tie for now. But yeah, I think it's really quite incredible what they were able to do with that first episode, and the places that they were able to take the character of Mark Spector and Stephen Grant. Now, I for what it's worth, I think that the whole idea, like the mental asylum, is something that I'm still trying to grapple with a little bit. It's a little weird to me, especially the part with Dr. Harrow. But again, I think that at least the show started out really strong, and it really grabbed me. And I thought I thought the beginning of Moon Knight, this is going to be the best MCU show that I've ever seen. I thought at the beginning of Loki, this is going to be the best MCU show I've ever seen. Even really liked the beginning of Hawkeye as well. Liked obviously WandaVision. But again, none of them have really topped WandaVision thus far. And that brings us to the 7th show, which is Miss Marvel. And surprise, surprise, it is episode 1, Generation Y. Now, I think the first 2 episodes are basically comparable. I think that they are pretty much the same to me. I do really enjoy both first episodes 1 and 2. And I really like episode 3. I think episodes 4 and 5 are really bad. And I think that episode 6 is good. I think it's good. It's fun. It's sort of a bummer because it feels like it should have been 1, 2, and 3, and then like 5 episodes of another show that continued episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then 6. We got episodes 4 and 5, which are not conceptually bad at all. I just think belonged in a completely different show. But again, it is what it is. I think episode 1 really hooked me. I just fell in love with the character of Kamala Khan, which is something I didn't think I would after seeing the trailer. I think the trailer was fine. But I think that the episode 1 did what it had to do in really just hooking us in with Kamala Khan as a character. So, if you notice, right, there are some patterns emerging here, and I'm not going to talk about this for too long because I know the question was just asking me to talk about my favorite episodes from each show. But I do think that it's interesting to point out that Marvel's Disney Plus shows typically have very strong pilots. I think that they know how to hook an audience into a show for sure. I also think that they know the emotional crux of each show. I think that has been very clear to me. I think I've cried, or at least teared up more in these shows than I have in any other movies, other than maybe Endgame and Infinity War, and No Way Home maybe for sure. But like WandaVision's ending was emotionally powerful. I think the message and the themes behind the Falcon and the Winter Soldier were powerful. Loki maybe a little less so for sure. Even the What If episode of Doctor Strange was heartbreaking. Hawkeye episode 5 and 6 where you're having these confrontations between Yelena and Clint and talking about Natasha, whose presence really loomed over that entire show, which I thought was a great move. Moon Knight, maybe less so. Miss Marvel, though, there were some scenes where I felt that emotion of the family. So it's really, I think now, it's going to be on Marvel to really figure out structure right plot structure, because I think that they have the emotion down. I think that they have the premise down, and I think that it's really just going to be up to the MCU to figure out how they're going to structure the shows so that they're going to be more I think more strong in the plot department, if that makes sense. So those are my rankings of the MCU episodes on Disney Plus, just my favorite ones from each show. And I hope you let me know some of your favorites in the comments down below as well.